Hey everybody, Matt Beall here, CEO and Chairman of Bealls Inc. I'm excited to share a presentation that I recently gave to the Bealls and Bealls Florida store managers at our annual store operations meeting. This is an overview of the Bealls company values. It's a deep dive, so buckle up, let me know what you think in the comments, and make sure to subscribe to Matt Beall Legacy for more. That's, a whole other topic. But what I will get into is the values. So, in terms of the values, I just want to say that there's not going to be a test or a quiz on these things today, okay? So there's no right or wrong answer as it relates to the values. What I'm here to offer is a diverse perspective. We welcome diversity within the company. That's not just diversity of form, it's diversity of thought as well. And so these values, I think, are different than most of the company values that you might see in other corporations. We've been thinking about them as a senior team for 3 years. I've been attempting to live these things, to dive into these things, and to truly understand them before I'm comfortable enough to stand up here in front of 300 people and talk about them. So that's what I've been attempting to do. Sometimes fail, sometimes succeed, but I have definitely grown. And just want to mention that they are subject to change. So these values are, they will evolve, they will adapt over time. They will get more. That we will continue to learn as people, and so the values will continue to grow and change as well. But as it stands right now, at least as of yesterday in my office, this is thoughts on the values. And we'll start off with authenticity. So authenticity of what? Authenticity of true self. And what does that mean? Authenticity essentially is self-awareness. It's knowing your true self. You're knowing who your free self, your true free self is. And in order to do that, it's helpful to make space for your true self. And you can make space for your true self by letting go of your false self. So what's a false self? I didn't warn you guys, this is going to be deep this morning, okay? So just get ready, buckle down. Letting go of so what is the opposite of authenticity? It's really the ego, right? So I just remind everybody, we went, the first book that we read as a senior team after taking over, and I mentioned when taking over, we're going to get into self-awareness. We're going to get into understanding emotional intelligence. That's going to help us all become better leaders, better people, better people within the business, better people at home. The first book that we read was Good to Great by Jim Collins, and we learned that the ego was what sabotaged businesses. It really hurts businesses. It creates toxicity. The ego creates negativity, so it's not the enemy. It just exists, and it's something that we need to be aware of. And so the opposite of my true self, my authentic self, is my false self. The opposite is due to, again, this is one perspective. This is my perspective. I'm not going to preface everything with that, but just know that this is my perspective on this, and it's okay to have different perspectives. But that authenticity, or rather ego, comes from identification with mind. And so when we think that we are the voice in the head, and this goes back to the Michael Singer books, right, and a little bit from what you may have read from Eckhart Tolle, but when we think that we're the voice in the head, then we are identified with our minds. As opposed to our mind, the voice just being a tool that we use to navigate this crazy world that we live in and to make decisions and to have memory, and to communicate with people, we actually mistake our true self for our minds. And that's the first step of identification. And the second step of identification is we begin to identify with the things that our minds identify with. And so whether that's a possession or a car or a job title or a nationality or a race or a religion or all the things that we think make us who we are, that's a second level, in my opinion, of mind identification. First, it's identification with mind. Second, it's the things that the mind identifies with. And so in order to make room for your true self and find out who your true self is, transcending mind identification is a potential strategy. And the awakening there is I'm not the voice in my head or the things that it attaches to. So who am I? Who am I? That's a question. That's a question that a lot of people have thought a lot about. I think that I am not, I don't have a life. I am life, right? So I don't have emotions. I am emotion, and we all have true emotions. And you can look and see that some of our true emotions might be joy, love, peace, creativity, playfulness, trust, nurturing, thoughtfulness, appreciation, security, openness, responsiveness. Those are part of what make us human. Those are our true emotions. But then we also have these false emotions that our mind creates, that are mind generated. And so the mind has these patterns, right? It creates thoughts, and then it creates strings of thoughts or stories, and then those turns into emotions. And so it goes from thought to story to emotion when the mind is in charge, the unobserved mind that we mistake for who we are. And in every story, there's someone to blame, and there's a victim typically. And the mind creates emotions like anger, jealousy, control, tension, fear, frustration, judgment, anxiety, depression, insecurity, closed-mindedness, reactivity. So what we're doing on our retreat this year, this is completely new to, you guys are hearing this for the first time. What we're doing this year on our retreat from an emotional intelligence standpoint, from a self-awareness standpoint, is we're attempting to distinguish between true emotions and false emotions. That's what our senior team is going to be doing in order to attempt to make our culture even better. I hope that you guys have seen an improvement in the culture over the last 3 years. I really feel like I have. I feel like it's there's less negativity, there's less toxicity, there's more self-awareness, I think, just in general in the culture, and it's because of conversations like this, some of these very deep conversations that we're having. So that's authenticity. You start out, I think that authenticity really is the first value, because if you don't know your true self, it's very difficult to get into the rest of them. It's very difficult to have acceptance, for example. Acceptance of what? Acceptance of reality, acceptance of life, acceptance of the present moment. That's all the same thing. Life happens in the present moment. It happens now. The acceptance of self and others. The meaning of acceptance for me is being okay inside regardless of what happens outside. That's big, being able to be okay. So let's give a couple of examples of that. So I'm maybe driving to the building today. I'll take myself as an example. And someone in front of me, there's a green light and there's a car in front of me, and the car slows down and the light turns red. And it's like, so I have the opportunity to observe my emotions and to observe my thoughts at that point in time. And it's great. It's life giving me the opportunity for self-awareness, for letting go of conditioning, the conditioning that creates this mental disturbance within myself. I get it every day that I get to drive to work. It's fantastic. It's like the best thing ever. And if you think, so somebody's phone rings in the building today, right? So we're starting this thing off. Somebody's phone rings, and I maybe there's some people that are, gosh, somebody's phone. That's resistance, right? It's the same thing that I created when the person in front of me I made up this story. Oh, they're probably looking at their phone. It's like they're, whatever. It's stories. It's stories it's thoughts turned into stories. Stories turn into emotions. And so, it's just life giving us an opportunity to work through conditioning, and different things are going to hit different people in different ways, right? So something that a phone ringing for me, not an issue. Well, it was great. It was like, oh, it's a good reminder for us to turn off our phones. What a great thing. But for some people, it's seriously, it creates resistance, and resistance is negativity. The two are synonymous. Okay, so our resistance is negativity, and it spreads, and that's toxic. And so we can spread negativity via resistance, or we can spread the other emotions that I listed. I won't go through all of them from the prior page. But essentially, that resistance is wanting life to be different than what it is. It's wanting things to be different. It arises due to personal preferences not being met. And I should mention, if at any time you feel, during this conversation, you feel resistance, as, oh man, he's talking about my personal preferences. Oh man, he's talking about my identifications. That's the ego. That's the voice in the head. That's the thing that's getting upset that we have the opportunity to observe, and not be, but to observe the mind. And so we all do have personal preferences. That's just how humans work. We have personal preferences, and it's not wrong, and it's not bad that we have personal preferences. It's just the nature of reality. It's just how things work. And so if we want to have acceptance, if we want to limit resistance, what we can do is attempt to transcend the mind's personal preferences. And we can do that by really going deep into them. By when the car stops in front of me on the road, I can really feel that feeling. Not be the feeling, not be the emotion, but observe that emotion. Observe how I feel and try to figure out where that came from. Is it like a childhood thing? You know, there's like, for me, yeah, my mom was like this crazy driver, and she always complained about like everybody on the road was going so slow and they don't know how to drive and all this stuff. So that's what's in my head still today that I'm still trying to, to work through. So, and I know it's different for different people. Different people have different conditioning. And that's okay. That's what makes us human. So, but if we want to have more acceptance, then to be able to immediately observe as my emotions start to pick up, that's how we can start to have more acceptance and to not spread that negativity with the people we love and the people we work with. So the awakening is personal preferences are not the way things should be, quote unquote. They're just fear, they're based on conditioning, and they're my attempt to control the outside world so that I don't have to experience change and grow. Probably enough on that. Accountability, rather, is the next one. And just to mention, I have no clock, but hopefully I'm okay on time. Okay. The accountability is accountability of mental state. So there's a couple of different ways to think about accountability. As it relates to our values, it has to do with accountability of mental state. And as it relates to, I think just traditional, anybody that would think about accountability in the workplace or as a family member or anything else, you think about, okay, accountability is me showing up on time, and it's me being there for my kids, and it's me working really hard and doing the best that I can to make a positive impact on the people around me. And that's fantastic. That is a form of accountability. Obviously, that's encouraged. But as we speak about accountability as a value, it's really that accountability of mental state. And so that means that I know that I determine my own mental state, and nobody else determines that. So I am responsible for my mental state. There's no one else to blame, and I'm not a victim. All right, that's pretty powerful. That when we can realize that man, that person made me so mad. No, they didn't. That person didn't make me so mad, or the person, I made myself mad because of my conditioning and because of my reactivity, and that's just critical for all of us to kind of understand as we navigate life that we create that mental turbulence. And the opposite of accountability is blame, when we're blaming someone else for how we feel on the inside. And blame arises due to, again, it's that unobserved mind. It's that voice in the head that's creating these thoughts, these stories, the emotions. And we can either be the voice, we can be identified with our minds, or we can be the observer of the voice. And we can learn from the voice and grow from the voice. Realize that there's not two of us. There's just one. There's just, and it's like once that clicks, it's really life-changing. So what we transcend is the unobserved mind. And the awakening that we have is that all of my mental disturbance is self-created. Again, there's no one else to blame, and I'm not a victim. A lot of times what we find ourselves defending is our identifications. So there's kind of three stages. Oh, we got an ice cream truck this morning. That's pretty cool. I'm ready for some ice cream. Sorry, I've got a 3.5-year-old in the house, so... So we are, what we defend is oftentimes identification. We defend our identification. So we defend what our mind is identified with. There's kind of stages of identification. It is identification, attachment, and addiction. Okay, that's it. The more identified you become, the more it gets towards the stage of addiction. So I can, and you can take anything that you become identified with and take it out to that extreme. People become addicted to politics. People become addicted to gaming. People become addicted to alcohol. People become addicted to caffeine. All of these things that we can attach to, that's just, again, it's mind. And, I think once you realize that you're not your mind, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's pretty cool. My mind's addicted to alcohol, but guess what? I'm not my mind, so I'm not addicted to alcohol. That's pretty powerful. The fact that we can all transcend our addictions. We can all transcend the things that we think that make us who we are, and really make space for that true self. In terms of compassion, and I'm going to try to get through these last four a little bit quicker, it's really kind of the first four that make up the core of the values. When you think about authenticity, acceptance, accountability, compassion, that's really the core values. And then we have empowerment, openness, transparency. That's kind of like a catch-all for all negativity. All of these values are a way to just remove negativity from your life and from the people that you interact with. And it's kind of a catch-all. And if you're practicing the values, then it's very difficult to have negativity kind of manifest in your life. So compassion for, again, we all are human, it happens at times, but compassion for self, compassion for others. What does that mean? That means that the meaning of compassion is, for me, being kind, empathetic, and understanding towards myself and others. So it's not just compassion. Everybody kind of always thinks compassion for others, but compassion for self is at least equally as important. I mean, because it's difficult. If you don't have compassion for yourself, it's difficult to have compassion for others at times. You know, there's people that just hate the sound of their voice, or they hate their physical features, or they hate seeing themselves on a camera, or that's all mind. That's all just conditioning. It's all stories. It's not real. It's just your mind having control and you thinking that you're your mind. And as soon as you disidentify with, well, I won't get into that, but the opposite of compassion, really, judging, labeling, and then not caring for or even hating whatever it is that you're judging or labeling. That's kind of the opposite of compassion. And the opposite of compassion can kind of span the spectrum from not caring about something to just hating something. You know, there's that whole area of the spectrum over on that side, and that is, again, that's really the opposite, and it comes from judgment and labeling. It comes from thinking that I'm a separate fragment. It comes from thinking that I'm different than other people or other things, and that potentially I'm in some way superior, and that often comes from insecurity deep down, which comes from fear. And so as we label ourselves and define ourselves as a separate fragment, it's you know, I am an American, I'm a Floridian, I am a Democrat or a Republican, I am a Muslim, I am from Bradenton, I am you know, a Seminole fan, I am you know, all these different slivers, all of these different ways that we can just narrow ourselves down to something that's this big. We're just making ourselves so small and into these little separate fragments through identification and labeling. That leads to a lack of compassion, and it leads to a lack of connection with the whole, and to be able to have empathy for other people. And so, again, by finding our true self, it helps us unlock that compassion. So we can transcend self-definitions and labeling of others and become more compassionate, and the awakening is that self-definition and labels are self-limitations and divisive. Random thought, the more I label myself as one thing and others as different, the more fragmented I become, the more cut off I become from, I kind of already said that, so we're good there. Empowerment, and I am finishing up here, guys, I promise. We have gone through the depths, okay, so that is as deep as this thing will get. I promise you all, it's up from here. Empowerment of what? Empowerment of true self, empowerment of others, meaning that empowerment is to grow, to teach, to trust yourself and others. You can grow yourself, you can teach yourself, you can trust yourself, and you can do the same with others. The opposite is micromanaging. That comes from a lack of trust. It comes from fear. Fear of what? Fear of losing control, fear of making myself not necessary. I am transcending a fear of irrelevance when I empower people. And the awakening is that I'm removing control and creating balance. And by removing control, we do create balance, and we learn, and we can observe other people. So observing your mind is one thing, but when you're not micromanaging someone, you can observe how things would be if you weren't there. If you weren't in your store. All right, we got to pause. Love it. This one, I got one that struck home with somebody. That's cool. We're on the sixth one, but I like it. We got to start somewhere. So cool, yeah. So that's right, though, right? So if you're not in your store, and you go, you have to take a week off, you go on vacation, how are things going to operate if you're not there? If you're micromanaging everybody, things are probably going to fall apart when you're not there, right? If you are open and observing and giving people the guide of how to operate and how to work, but ultimately trusting people. Trust people until there's a reason not to trust people, right? I mean, that's really the way to do things. And if people give you a reason not to trust them, it's time to make a change. It's time to do something different. It's time to move on. But until that happens, step back, let go, observe what happens, and that's how you learn. Removing control is creating balance. In everything, in nature, if we remove control from nature, God forbid the power grid's turned off, I think we would see perfect balance on the planet again. It would be very, very probably incredible how fast things return back to balance. Not suggesting that we turn off the power grids. And yeah, management nirvana is kind of an interesting thought, and that gets back to I want to surround myself with people that don't need to be managed. I want to surround myself with people like a Chris, like a Tian, like a Dan, like a Karen, that are able to do their job even if I wasn't there and if I wasn't telling them what to do. And that's what I have. I'm very fortunate to have a very, very talented group of people that can operate and have accountability and responsibility for their businesses if I wasn't there. And as a manager, that's what you guys want, or that's what you want to have in your stores. You want to know that the people in your stores are going to do a phenomenal job. You want yourself to be irrelevant out there, okay? That's really the ultimate goal. You're not going there, and there shouldn't be fear about that. That should be ultimately the ultimate goal. Openness is openness to information, openness to others. Meaning is ability to listen, ability to change, ability to learn. The opposite of openness is being closed-minded or closed to information. And when are we closed-minded? When are we not open? It happens when we think we already know the answer. We think that we have the answer. We think that why would I listen to somebody if I already have the answer? Why would a Republican ever listen to a Democrat? Why would a Democrat ever listen to a Republican? They already know what the answer is. So there's no open to. That's the whole issue with. I won't get into politics, but that's the issue, right? That's their job, and so it's broken. And if we were open-minded, and then we could transcend belief, what I call belief and skepticism. So belief would be taking something to 100% and saying this is the truth, this is what this is. And there's very few truths. Light travels faster than sound. We're pretty sure of that. That's what we take things to 100% and we say it's a truth, and then that closes our minds to the possibility that someone else might have a different perspective that is valid and that has some truth to it. And so, and on skepticism is just the opposite end of the spectrum. We take things to zero. And a belief, a negative belief is skepticism. We think that I identify as a believer or I identify as a skeptic. It's the same thing. It's just the opposite end of the spectrum. So you might say, I don't believe that Elvis is dead. Well, that's a belief, right? I don't believe in UFOs. That's a belief. I do believe in UFOs. That's a belief. Right, so transcending that and being open to different possibilities for whatever the situation is that you're dealing with, that's really what openness is all about. And understanding that my beliefs are my limitations. So if I am, okay, this is right, this is the exact right way to do things, and I am in this lane and that's all I see, my blinders are on. I don't see the other 340 degrees that exist around me because I am stuck into this one thing, this one thought, this one idea. And so it really is a limitation, whether you take things to 0% or to 100%. Again, in my personal opinion. I create beliefs and mistake them for truths because I fear not knowing. It's one of the reasons why beliefs are created. And open-mindedness is always in between that. It's always between 0 and 100. So when you listen to people and when people are talking to you and when just to have an open mind and to be curious and to be there and to be present and to really listen and to take in their information, that's what openness is all about. Transparency, last one. Transparency of true self and transparency of information, meaning disclosure and vulnerability. I think if more people were as transparent as Tim Burchett, we would know a lot more about what's actually going on out there. And so we can be, it does take vulnerability to be transparent. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to other people to be transparent. The opposite is holding back. The opposite is keeping secrets. And again, this one arises due to fear of judgment. And desire to control other people's perspectives. And so by transcending that fear, we can become more transparent. And by sharing information as a company, as a team, in your stores, with your family, with your coworkers, what you're doing is you are creating a tighter connection and you're creating trust. And you are, you're creating a tighter connection, you're creating trust. I am free when I'm vulnerable and express the truth about my true self, and others' judgments are their limitations. And so why would I worry about other people judging what I have to say? Why would I care? It's just their limitation. If someone is judging me, if someone is judging something that they saw on Limitless, or if somebody is judging, something that they're limiting themselves, it's a total limitation of that individual. And so that's, to realize that, to have that awakening and to realize that other people's judgments only serve to limit themselves and they're temporary and they're created by the mind. It's very freeing because it allows you to be yourself. It allows your true, authentic self to manifest, and you start to just, be free to live in a state of freedom. And so transparency can really help accomplish that. And that's it. So just to close, I want to just comment that on the retreat in 2024, we're going to be taking a deeper dive into the values and specifically as it relates to the emotions. I mentioned this before, but there are emotions that not all emotions are bad, right? And nothing's bad, nothing's good or bad, but certainly not all emotions are bad. Emotions are a part of what make us human, but being able to distinguish between emotions that have been created by the mind and something that I'm attached to or identified with or addicted to are different emotions than the ones that are true self emotions. And so we're going to be talking a lot about that, and that'll hopefully help us become more authentic as leaders and as people. And to do that, we are going to be focusing on the emotion wheel. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but it lists all of these emotions and all these pretty colors, and we're going to kind of go through all of them and say, well, this is anxiety is a future-looking emotion, because I'm anxious about something that hasn't happened yet. Depression, sadness is a backward-looking emotion, and it's a past emotion. And so we're going to go through and kind of dissect and really try to understand all of the different emotions and where they come from. To do that this year, we're going to be reading Fear and Happiness, two books that are named after some pretty common emotions. And Thich Nhat Hanh is an author who wrote those two books. He passed away about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. He at almost 100 years old, but very insightful person. And then so that's kind of it, I guess, for this. So I went a little bit over time. I do apologize for that, but yeah, I really appreciate it, guys.